Hello class, settle down, everybody sit, get comfortable. Okay, we're going to jump right into today's lesson, which is our weekly words. You know them and love them, and today we have eight words that we need to go over before your test next week. So if you could all take out your notebooks, or if you got the list yesterday, you can pull that out as well, just to follow along. And I'm going to be going over each word. If you have any questions, of course, just let me know and we can go over whatever you need. So, for the test next week, you are going to need to know the synonyms, antonyms, and write an example. It's a little bit more simple than last week. You don't need to know the full definition. Your synonyms and antonyms should tell me that you understand the word, and then your sentence example should prove that as well. Okay, any questions before we begin? Great. All right, our first word. Our first word is immaculate. 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 Can anyone tell me what part of speech that is? Adjective. Very good. And this is free from a spot or stain, spotlessly clean. When something is immaculate, that means there are no flaws in it. It is perfectly perfect. I feel like most of you should know this word, so this should be pretty much a freebie on your test next week. Now, however, this could also mean free from moral blemish, so not just immaculate cleanliness, literally like on a shirt, but also an immaculate soul, or free from impurity, immorality. Now, this could also mean free from fault or flaw, so not in regards to cleanliness, but if you make something in an immaculate way, that means there are no flaws in it. So it truly does mean perfect, and you can use it in different happenstances, I suppose. So the synonyms for this, can anyone give me some synonyms? That would be a good one. Flawed, right? Impure, tainted. So from the moral definition, an antonym could be corrupt. Very good. And then from the free from fault or flaw, exactly, so flawed would be a perfect one for that. In terms of impeccable cleanliness, you could say filthy, defiled. Okay, so let's write down some of the good synonyms. Impeccable, unblemished, pure, flawless, unsullied, errorless, etc. And then for our antonyms, we do have, for the antonyms, let's go ahead and use our red marker here. So just remember, it doesn't literally have to refer to cleanliness of something physical, but it could be internal cleanliness like morality or the quality of something. So other forms you might see are immaculateness and immaculately. So that would be the noun and the adverb. Very good. Immaculateness, immaculately. This is one of those that can be very hard to, or very, very easy to mess up the spelling of. So just make sure that you have the double M's here, the one C here, and make sure to include your E there. All right. Does anyone have any questions on immaculate? Immaculate. Wonderful. All right. Are we ready to move on? Good. Okay. So the next word that we are going to have on next week's test is the word serendipity. 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 The part of speech is a noun. And does anyone know what it means? It's kind of a hard one to define, but it is an aptitude for making desirable discoveries by accident. So it's not just, it has a very positive connotation to it. So it means lucky in a good way. It's not just a fluke. So you could think of it as good fortune, luck. It can be tied to destiny. You'll often hear serendipities like that. So our synonyms would be, you can just use the word luck. How about good fluke? Anybody else? Blessing. It's a very good one. And then for antonyms, you can think about, now this is a noun, so unlucky would not work. Can you change that into a noun? Misfortune. That's probably going to be your best antonym. And this actually is derived from an old Persian fairy tale. It was called The Three Princes of Serendip. And it's kind of a silly story, but these three princes basically go along these little adventures and they get quite lucky along the way, where they are able to deduce and figure things out that are a little tricky or a little lucky. A good example sentence for this would be, we have all experienced the serendipity of relevant information arriving just when we were least expecting it. So that ever happened to you where you're looking for something and something stumbles into your lap or into your life just at the perfect time, right when you needed it? That's serendipity, or at least a good example of it. All right, so other forms that you might see are the adjective, which is serendipitous, good, beneficial, favorable, like serendipitous weather for the wedding. So it was lucky that they got good weather for their wedding. That would be considered serendipitous. Not something you can control, just something lucky, or even going so far as into fate or destiny. Serendipitous, with our synonyms being luck, fluke, blessing, antonyms being misfortune. Does anybody have any questions on serendipitous before I erase the board? Okay. Everyone has it down? Okay. All right, we are 2 words in. Everyone doing fine. Amazing. All right, the next word is ambivalence. Ambivalence. A-M-B-I-V-A-L-E-N-C-E. Ambivalence. Now, you might, in some cases, see ambivalency. The part of speech is a noun. Very good. It means uncertainty or fluctuation, especially when caused by inability to make a choice, or by a simultaneous desire to say or do two opposite or conflicting things. So essentially, it's not just being uncertain. It's being uncertain because you can't decide between two opposite things. So it's a very interesting word. It definitely does not mean indifferent. I know indifferent, ambivalent. So I see a lot of students get those two mixed up or think that they mean the same thing. Not at all. In fact, it just means that they are uncertain for a particular reason. Typically, a good example of this might be you would feel ambivalent, which is the adjective. You would feel ambivalent about inviting your friend to a party when you like her, but everybody else at the party does not. So that's conflicting feelings and it's causing you uncertainty. Sometimes ambivalence can be just simply used as being in a state of uncertainty, but I did want to make that clarification when you see it, that it could be because it's between two conflicting or opposing feelings. Okay, so synonyms, we can just use uncertainty, indecision, tentativeness, hesitancy. So antonyms, I would say that you could use the word indifference as an antonym. Because indifference would imply that you don't care at all. But ambivalence is you care in two opposite ways. But you can also use certainty. And another one I really like is decisiveness. Okay. Anybody have any questions? A good example sentence. Being near her calmed him despite his ambivalence. So the clue there, the clue would be the word despite. So he feels calm despite the fact that he feels ambivalent. So that gives you the clue that he probably also feels very either agitated by her or energized by her, or maybe he's usually nervous around her. A lot of the times, ambivalent can be hard to define with context. The word itself is giving the context. So just be sure to note that. The other form I want you to know is the adjective ambivalent. Okay. Next, we have the word ubiquitous. Ubiquitous. You might see ubiquitary, but that's not as common. Ubiquitous. This is an adjective. And it means omnipresent, existing or being anywhere, everywhere, at the same time. You don't just have to use it for God or godly figures. It can also be used for things like fog, ants. The thing about ubiquitous is that it doesn't have to be literal. So a good example would be smartphones have become a seemingly ubiquitous part of our culture. So it doesn't literally mean that smartphones are everywhere, everywhere, everywhere at all times, but it means that you see them everywhere. They're constant, they're all around. Ubiquitous. So synonyms for this could be omnipresent, like we said. Universal. Maybe pervasive. Okay, can anyone give me a good antonym here? Rare. Good. Rare. Scarce. How about limited or sporadic? Very good, very good. Okay, other forms we have. I want you to know the adverb ubiquitously. And I want you to know the noun. Ubiquitousness. Ubiquitousness. Ubiquitously. Ubiquitousness. Does anybody have any questions on ubiquitous before we move on and I erase the board? About the spelling, adjective, synonyms, antonyms. Okay, sure. Back to ambivalence. Yep, make sure you have it written down. And you just need to know ambivalent. That's the adjective. Ambivalent. Okay. Everybody ready? Okay. The next word is Number 5, recalcitrant. 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 Part of speech. Adjective. Very good. And this means none of you, I'm sure. It means defiant of authority or restraint. So stubborn, rebellious. Exactly. It doesn't necessarily have to pertain to people though. So it could be difficult to manage or operate. So something like a recalcitrant machine. Or it could mean not responsive to treatment. So a recalcitrant illness or injury. So for synonyms, we can do stubborn, of course, and rebellious. But I also really like the words obstinate and obstinate means stubbornly adhering to your action or to your opinion no matter what people say, no matter what people do. They can't argue with you. They can't change your mind. So that's a really good synonym and a good word to know as well. I also like disobedient. Anybody else? Unruly. That's a good one. Okay. So our antonyms shouldn't be too difficult. Agreeable. Compliant. Obedient. Very good. Can anybody give me a good example sentence here? Recalcitrant child. So if the child is recalcitrant both to his teachers and to his parents, perhaps it's time to arrange a meeting with a counselor. Good. Okay. The other form I want you to know is the noun. Recalcitrant. So it's exactly the same as the adjective. A recalcitrant can be recalcitrant. Recalcitrant as a noun, recalcitrant as an adjective here. Stubborn, rebellious, obstinate, disobedient, unruly. Antonyms: agreeable, compliant, obedient. Other forms: noun, recalcitrant. Any questions? All right, we're moving on to one of my favorite words of the week, mollify. Mollify. A short one, easy to spell. Okay, this is your first verb. And to mollify. Does anybody know what that means? Mollify. It is to soothe, soften, or reduce in intensity. So it could be those three different examples. So you could mollify a disgruntled staff with a raise. Lotion mollifies your dry, cracked skin. Or time mollified his anger, it reduced in intensity. So synonyms for this should actually be not too hard to find ones that work. We can use our words appease, assuage, pacify, one of our other weekly words from a while ago. Placate, very good. Okay. Appease, assuage, pacify, placate for mollify. So our antonyms are going to be, let me get my little stool here. Oh, your teacher's getting old. Look at this tilt. That would be verbs like to anger, irritate, anybody else? Provoke, very good. Pester. The only other form I want you to know for this is the noun, and that's mollification. Mollification. Again, that is the noun. This one's a pretty easy one, so a good example. I gave you a few in the beginning. He tried to mollify his critics with an apology. Mollify, appease, assuage, pacify, placate. Antonyms: to anger, to irritate, to provoke, to pester. Mollification is our noun here. Any questions on mollify or recalcitrant before I erase the board for our final two words? Okay. I think you as a class getting very, very good at these tests as a whole. So I don't anticipate this one being a problem for any of you. But as always, there is the weekly word study group on Wednesdays. You want to practice your flashcards together? The last two words before we are done for the day, and you can work on your flashcards. Okay, this one you may have heard before. Pedantic. Pedantic. P-E-D-A-N-T-I-C. Pedantic. Pedantic. This is an adjective. But I think what's good to note is the noun, a pedant. And that is somebody who makes a show of knowledge, but who's a precisionist, obnoxiously emphasizes small details and things. So you might run across a pedant in a very popular fandom like Star Wars or something, where they get very irritated if you don't know all of the tiniest details or if something is inconsistent. They obnoxiously emphasize their knowledge in the tiniest facts. I know you're a Star Wars fan. No, I don't mean any offense. but it's true. Not just Star Wars. Exactly. Now, it definitely means pretentious, but in a boring way. So you want to note this boring connotation. So you'll mostly see it in relation to learning things. It can also mean unimaginative or dull. So someone's writing style or teaching style could be pedantic. Maybe some of you find me pedantic. Thank you, class. And with this negative connotation, our synonyms are going to be words like pompous, but dry, ostentatious, that's a really good word. You can also use formal, fussy. You can have those. So antonyms are actually quite interesting here. So I would certainly accept words like informal, of course, relaxed, laid back, nonchalant, I also really like using words like enthralling or captivating, so that really ties into the boring, dull, sort of like droning on sort of teaching. So maybe engaging, captivating. Yes, lenient works for sure. The other form I want you to know is the adverb pedantically. Oh, I didn't use my blue marker. That's going to bother me. I'll change it, class, don't worry. How else will you know? Just make sure that you note the spelling of this word, which is the A-L-L-Y, not just L-Y at the end. So we have pompous, dry, ostentatious, formal, fussy. Antonyms, we have informal, relaxed, laid back, nonchalant, captivating, lenient, pedantically as our adverb, pedantic as our weekly word. Any questions on pedantic? Oh, our example. So the example that I liked was, he has always been unnecessarily pedantic in his speeches, not paying heed to the practical demands of a situation. So can anyone explain pedantic in that sentence? Yes. Very good. Very good. So the unnecessarily gives you a good clue of the connotation. But instead of focusing on what's important in this speech or what the purpose of his speaking is, it sounds like this person certainly either concentrates on the details that really are necessary and probably drones on and on while doing it. No. Not like our principal. I need a job. All right, the last word. Do you mind if I just erase this one? give ourselves some space here. Is everyone good on pedantic? Okay. Our last word is quintessential. Quintessential. Quintessential, this is an adjective. And this one's not a terrible one to remember because of the word essential in quintessential. The definition of quintessential is perfectly typical or representative of a particular kind of person or thing. So just remember the word essential. So parties and football are a quintessential part of state college. Something like that. So it's if you were to define a person or thing, what would be essential in noting about them? What is the basically the crux of what you're trying to describe here? So synonyms for this would be typical, ultimate, ideal, classic, model. So I understand that my example might be a little confusing with the ideal and ultimate synonym here. It just doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best, like the thing you're describing isn't the best or necessarily good, but the description that you're using is the best description for the person or object. Does that make sense? Okay. I can give you another example. He was the quintessential intellectual, remarkably detached from the real world. So the author of this sentence thinks that intellectuals are typically remarkably detached from the real world. Okay, that's okay. Antonyms we can go over. Hopefully that will clarify a bit. Our antonyms would be atypical, abnormal, irregular, the other form that I do want you to know is this long word, quintessential. This is your adverb, of course, so maybe country music, apple pie, and a light beer is quintessentially American. Something like that. Depends on who you ask. You'll get very varying answers. But does anybody have any questions on quintessential? Hopefully that made it more clear. Typical, ultimate, ideal, classic, model. Atypical, abnormal, irregular. Adjective, quintessentially. And this is spelled Quintessential. Quintessential. Okay, that is all of your weekly words. Let me go ahead and put this away. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay. The test is next week, and again, synonyms, antonyms, and example sentence. Yes. This week I am allowing you to use the other forms in your example if you'd like, yes. Well, thank you, class, and you can use the rest of the time to get started on your flashcards so you can get studying. If you have any questions, I'll be at my desk. Okay. Very good job today.